let's go ahead and get into this Kalen DeBoer hire. And I'm going to post this on live and on the air here. I want to get your thoughts. Give me some adjectives because here's what I'm shooting for. SEC fans should be blank about the Kalen DeBoer hire. Kalen DeBoer hire.
It's Kalen.
Kalen, excuse me. I thought you're Caleb. We can't have any more Calebs. Kalen DeBoer hire. So let me get your thoughts there. What would be some adjectives that we could add? I'm going to put as one: optimistic and excited. King is dead. How about good? Do you want to say scared? Good hire. Anything else you want to add to that?
Solid.
Okay, solid. So that gives you an option in between. And you did say over the weekend that you said it was a Butch Jones type hire. You didn't mean that, did you?
I thought that at first, and then I did more research. But I wrote an article yesterday, and I actually wanted to dive into what I wrote yesterday because I think it's Tennessee and SEC rival fans should be excited about this hire. Even though at the same time, I can't blame Alabama for making the hire. Is that a weird thing to say, Dave?
No, and I think as a matter of fact, we go ahead and dig into it right now. So take part in our poll question. It's on the YouTube channel. So the three choices that are there are pretty simple. They are SEC fans should be blank about the DeBoer hire. Solid doesn't fit, but that was Caleb's pick as a word. But anyway, optimistic and excited by Saban, scared, good hire, and solid. Okay, so we'll just go with that. There we go. All right, so as we get rolling and we dig in to this hire and what it means for the conference, I mean, it means a lot. A lot of teams are going to be affected by the hire. So let me start with this, and that is today's tough question. It's brought to you by Andy Mason of AndyMasonRealEstate.com.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of OffTheHookSports.com.
Okay, so Caleb proposes this at the 3:45 a.m. meeting, so I want him to share his thoughts. Said Alabama not an attractive job, even if there wasn't Nick Saban's shadow. Now, first of all, I think a lot of people told them no. I think you had the guy at Oregon release the video how excited he is to be at Oregon. So either they ask him,
the lamest video ever.
Yeah, you never know nowadays. Did he just say that and kind of acting like in social media that he got offered? Yeah, another couple of those guys. I don't know if they were offered or not, but I don't think it's an attractive job because Saban. I don't know how you can't consider it a very attractive job now. I feel like, and I could be wrong because I want to hear your take, that you are somewhat taking that Alabama pre-Saban and saying that it's not a great job, which I would have agreed with in the time based off recruiting and lack thereof in state. So let me get your thoughts. It's brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. 40 years of experience in real estate. And Andy Mason, best service, best prices in the biz. AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Okay, so they don't have the in-state talent, Alabama doesn't, that other states have, but it's a lot better. So I didn't think it was a great job, but man, if you want to take out the Saban factor, that's a pretty attractive job with a lot of support and a lot of facilities, which I know everybody says everybody has now, but they've got the nicest. And I think there's something to be said for basically being the program, the franchise, whatever you want to call it, in the entire state. You don't compete with the Falcons. You don't compete with other places. So I'm interested to see where you go because I disagree. I think that's a great job.
All right, let me start with it.
Without Saban.
Let me start with this. I'm going to applaud the Kalen DeBoer hire for Alabama because I'm going to give credit for three things. And I'm going to give Greg Byrne a lot of credit, Dave. And I wrote about this, and I encourage you guys to check it out on offthehooksports.com right now. First of all, can we give them credit for not trying to hire somebody out of Saban's shadow? You know, that's how common of a mistake is that, Dave? When a legend leaves and you try to replace the legend with somebody who like touched the legend's robes one day. You know what I mean? And that's what Alabama did for years with Bear Bryant. They also went for an offensive hire. Now, the last time they hired an offensive mind from the state of Washington didn't work out so well. No, guys, go look at
Mike Price. We're talking about Mike Price.
Yeah, Mike Price from Washington State.
Everything was fine until his specific prostitute ordered one of everything off the menu. And that's when it went
exactly. South. The other part I want to give them credit for is that
people are going to be like, Mike Price is on the golf course. Do you ever wonder he gets that call and they say, Mr. Price, I just want to let you know that somebody's ordered one of everything off of the menu from room service. Don't you think to yourself, well, I've got a prostitute in there and just okay the charges and take care of it later instead of making her more mad by not letting her get the food and then she goes crazy? Anyway, get back to your point. Sorry. I mean, if I'm on the golf course and there's a prostitute back in my hotel room at the resort,
prostitute has all the leverage.
I'm going to say she can have two of everything on the menu. Go ahead.
Exactly. The other part I'm going to give them credit for, because everybody's overrating this, because they're like, he's never been in the SEC. He can't recruit in the SEC. First of all, you can hire staff members to do this. And Dave, you know this. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Les Miles had no SEC ties before they went to LSU, and Florida. They all won national titles at their school there. SEC ties is overrated, provided you hire staff members with SEC ties. You know who had deep SEC ties? Jeremy Pruitt. You know who else did? Derek Dooley. How'd that work out for you, Tennessee? SEC ties don't matter. Yeah. So those are the things I'm going to give credit for. But I don't think he's a great coach. I watched him against Texas, and he made a really dumb decision when he tried to run a play when he could have run the clock out. I think he inherited what he inherited at SWE, and so I think he's a little bit overrated. But he's the best given the circumstances. The problem is the circumstances with Alabama, which is this. It's a top 5 to 10 job if you just look at recruiting talent, facilities, program tradition, and everything like that. It's not Georgia, LSU, or Ohio State. Can you give me that, Dave? It's not on the level of those three schools.
Yes, but closer again when they're looking for a Saban, and they found him 17 years ago, closer to those schools than it did because of his influence. Guys grew up. You think about 17 years, guys grow up at 8 years old going, I want to play for that Nick Saban guy. And Alabama is incredible. That has generational type effect. So not as much, but I will definitely give you that there are a handful of schools like the ones you mentioned that have an immediate talent advantage by default.
Right. So they don't have the default talent advantage, even though they have a good one. They don't have tier 1 talent advantage by default. Then there's another layer. Guys, go to On3 right now. Look up the top 20 and most ambitious NIL collectives, and you'll see why I think Nick Saban retired. And I've said this from the start. Alabama's nowhere to be found in the top 20. There are 9 SEC schools. Next year, when Texas and Oklahoma join, there will be 9 SEC schools with better NIL collectives in Alabama. Now, that doesn't matter when you have Nick Saban, because, Dave, as you know, players are going to take the Nick Saban discount to go play for Nick Saban. That's what we called it, the Nick Saban discount.
In thinking that they're going to make it to the NFL, and that's a proven graduate school for engineering or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. So they'll take the Nick Saban discount. There was no other coach, short of Urban Meyer or Jim Harbaugh. There was no other coach that they could get that could get that discount for recruits. Was there on the NIL circuit? And I think this is why Alabama. It's not a tier 1 job because there's only 3 tier 1 jobs in America. Maybe 4 if Florida State and Miami fall too far behind in the ACC, and Florida could become one. But there's only 3 right now. When you add in the NIL collective, you're Alabama. Georgia has a better NIL collective than you do. Auburn has a better NIL collective than you do. Tennessee has a better NIL collective than you do. Texas A&M. Florida even. I'm naming schools that have clear-cut larger, more ambitious NIL collectives in Alabama right now. How are they supposed to compete on the recruiting trail, Dave? NIL collective outweighs recruiting talent in your backyard now. And Alabama's 10th in the SEC.
You have to completely change. You have to completely change what you're doing entirely. And Nick Saban didn't need all that NIL money. He made a phone call, got Jahmyr Gibbs for 1 year. But for the most part, I can't think of any significant transfers they've taken other than Gibbs. So you have to realign an entire organization, because as of now, the great thing about having Nick Saban, other than, yes, he's a championship proven coach and a great defensive coach and understands the offensive side, was that you didn't have to worry about NIL, because guys were still going to come to Alabama and the boosters were going to flock together to pay them. There's also more of a system in Alabama, which makes it a little bit more square so that everybody gets something, every player. And you've actually seen some other schools start to copy that a little bit, like Tennessee. But you're right. I mean, suddenly you're not only at a disadvantage not having Nick Saban, you're at a huge disadvantage because you have to reorganize your entire football program. You've got to go to boosters who you're taking money from to build the new athletic complex and say, well, if a collective group calls you, we're going to have to play that game now since Nick decided to retire. Those are the conversations that have been going on for the past week. And I guarantee you that Kalen DeBoer is not walking in there thinking he has zero NIL dollars to spend.
But that's have it gotten you over to my side then? That Alabama's not a good job right now because it's not even a top 10 NIL collective in the SEC, which is going to hold them back severely?
Well, no, it's a hypothetical. Had Saban not been there, I think they would have been in the top 3 or 5.
So you do think you think they will kick themselves into high gear a little bit with Kalen DeBoer knowing that they have to?
Do I think they will? I think they should. I've seen a lot of athletic departments do stupid stuff. So, but they should.
Because here's the thing. This is the problem with Kalen DeBoer. I've questioned his decision making. One of the decisions I'm questioning is why he would leave Washington for the Alabama job. Because quite honestly, I'd have stayed at Washington. I would not have taken the Alabama job at all. You are in a good situation at Washington up there. You could have used this to negotiate a better pay. And if you're not smart enough to see that, I don't know if you're smart enough to actually lead a team to a national championship game. Quite honestly,
I probably would have stayed at Washington as well or waited for another job. But as far as the fit, the thumbnail sketch of him, quarterback coach, I don't think that's any surprise. I think if you coach quarterbacks, you've got a better chance of getting a job than another guy. That's just kind of where the game is right now. If you're a quarterback whisperer, a quarterback guru, we brought up the discussion last week. Should Alabama call Josh Heupel? And we got clickbait and all this. No, it wasn't. And here's why they should have called Josh Heupel. Not that he wouldn't have left. He loves Tennessee. Do not get me wrong. And great point by Dylan that I want to get back to. But Josh Heupel, even though not as accomplished, is every bit the quarterback guru that Kalen DeBoer is. Here's the issue I have with the DeBoer hire. He's known to be a program builder. You don't have to build anything at Alabama. You want to keep this thing cruising. And I think
he's.
Let's use the old SEC West, which is in effect. But if we were talking SEC West next year, I would say that let's say Texas were in the West. Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss will win more games in the next 5 years than Alabama. I'll go on record as saying that right now. Just playing with the West teams. I'm not talking about Georgia. I'm not talking about Tennessee. I'm not talking about anybody else. Just what are the West teams?
Well, I did it for fun last week, but Dave, look, this was why I said they should have hired Lane Kiffin. Who do you trust as an offensive mind more, Lane Kiffin or Kalen DeBoer?
Lane Kiffin. I mean, I'm with you. I've got no argument with that. I think that would have been a better hire. No question.
I think they should have gone. I think they were. Here's the thing. The jokes that you make about Lane were kind of open, and that I made with you were kind of open secrets in Tuscaloosa to problematic fashion. So they were worried they would get another Mike Price situation, I think. But in my mind, it's like, I think Lane would be smarter than Mike Price with his if he was fooling around still. And so I'm like, take the risk. If he's doing it on his personal life, who cares? You're trying to win football games here. And I just don't think it's a big deal. And I think that worried them. So they went for a guy who I think is, again, I said, given the circumstances, they don't want someone with personal issues, and they didn't want to go the defensive or Nick Saban route. They made the best hire given the circumstances. Just not a great hire.
Yeah, it fits. It checks a lot of boxes. What are the expectations for Kalen? That'll be my question for you. Is it 1 championship, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Haun. Enjoy life better when you see better. Local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination. Go to ccteyes.com, ccteyes.com. So at the end of the day, if Kalen DeBoer wins 1 championship, is that a success? 1 national title, is that a success at Alabama?
I think a coaching tenure is always a success if you win a national title. Always. I'm one of those guys. It's like if you get a quarterback, Dave, you draft a quarterback, a franchise quarterback. If he wins you a Super Bowl, that was a successful run. Period. End of story. Like that's your goal.
Exactly. No, and I think if you win 1 championship, that's enough that he should be held on his own merit, but I don't think he ever will. SEC fans should be blank about the Kalen DeBoer hire. That was on our YouTube page. And so far, people seem to really like the hire in terms of what it means for them. Optimistic and excited by Saban gets 50% of the vote. Solid gets 42% of the vote. And it's a little scared. Good hire, just 8% of the vote. That might be the Alabama brethren on here. There's only so much you can do in this situation if you're Alabama. I will give them credit. I thought they showed everybody how to hold a coaching hire. I do believe that. I think they called the guys they were most interested in, whether it was landing or not, and then they landed on their guy. And that's something that Tennessee in a couple of hires hasn't done well, and other programs have struggled too. So I will give them credit in getting that done. It didn't drag on, and you can't have it drag on with the transfer portal that we're going to talk about that Caleb's mentioned opens up another 30 days from a coaching change. I do think efficiently they did the job. They laid the foundation, but I don't know if the foundation is going to be something you want to build a house on.
I just don't think they have rock solid foundation because of the NIL issue. So I agree with you. I'll even give this because
maybe foundation wasn't the right word. They put up the siding, but the siding could fall off.
Exactly. Look, I was unfair. I texted it to Dave and Gyro on Saturday, guys. I did say Alabama hired the new Butch Jones. I based it off Kalen DeBoer making basic in-game coaching mistakes. But I'll give him this. I watched the press conference. He's not a snake oil salesman, Kalen DeBoer. He's not a guy. You didn't see him sit there and say, what we accomplished at Washington had never been accomplished before in the history of Washington athletics. And, by getting to the national championship game, I did something that Jesus could not have done. I mean, that was Butch Jones's legacy. He would pretend that was the first time Washington ever had that type of success in football, wouldn't he? And he would go to Alabama and pretend like we're going to rebuild Alabama into a great program, as if he was taking over nothing. So I'm going to be fair. Kalen DeBoer is not that. I think he is. Watching him for the press conference, I don't think he feels like he's in over his head. I just don't know if he has the offensive mind necessary to succeed there. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, that's very fair. Dylan had a great point earlier. And see, Dylan, I would argue, I was just getting ready to give you credit. I would argue, you said Dan Lanning saying no derailed their process. I think they were ready to go to the next guy. So
they had their list.
I think they were good to go. I don't derailed. I mean, altered maybe, but I wouldn't go quite that far.